Yeah, hi there. I've seen a lot of people. I've been hanging out on the Crusader Kings Reddit a bit. I've seen quite a few people who have been kind of confused on how to actually get started in CK3, like complete beginner stuff. Especially if you're coming from Crusader Kings 2, it's pretty weird. So, I thought what I might do is talk about how to really get started on like a tutorial game, because the game tutorial is not great. So we're going to do an Irish game with Merchad over here, because he's pretty much the best character to start with. In CK2, you would often be recommended to start with him, and so for this game they just went, screw it, go ahead. Yeah. So I did upscale the user interface a bit, but I might scale it back down a little bit, because at more than 100% it tends to overrun the boundaries of the screen, which is not great. There we go. So we check the game rules. Normally I would play with Iron Man on, but I'm going to leave it off, and just in case the game crashes, that way I can reload a save and not lose like a ton of work. For a tutorial, I'm going to leave all the difficulty settings and so on just as the default, so now I'm going to reset the default, so everything is now on the default. So if you just pick up and play, this is the same settings that you'll have. And the game needs a minute to load. Okay, so first things first. This is the default map. It's political map selecting realms, so we can see here's us, Munster, which is where it automatically zoomed us to. So we're in Ireland, which is part of England. You can check, actually I'll talk about that later. So the game starts paused. This is a real-time game, but it's a pausable real-time game. And the game really expects that you'll do lots of things while you're paused. Like, it's not really a game that expects you to, develop mad clicking skills. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and unite Ireland and become King of Ireland and completely control Ireland. Merchad starts off in a really good position. He's not really involved in what else is going on, because at the moment England is currently in the middle of the battle of, Stamford Bridge, which is the big three-way between Godwinson and Harold Hardroller and William the Conqueror. Normally William the Conqueror will win because he has like 10 billion event troops, as you can see here. Yeah, 5,000 men, whereas the King of England has about that much, but his are mostly levies, which suck. So that's a lot of words that I just throw at you that you probably won't understand, so let's start by talking about the user interface. So down here in the bottom left we have us, so this is the person that we're currently playing as, and this is the flag of our realm, so we can click these. That quickly accesses our page, which has pretty much all of the information we need, which I'll talk about later. In here we'll bring up your realm page, which I will also talk about later. This is for your lifestyle. Again, this is stuff that I'll go into in more detail later. I just want to talk about what things are at the moment. This is your stress gauge, trying to fill it out. This tells you how your house is doing. At the moment, this isn't really important in the game as a whole, I mean. It has lots of room to expand, but at the moment you can mostly ignore it. The main thing you want to be mindful of is that the house head and dynasty head get pretty significant bonuses when dealing with the rest of their house, which you can read if you go over the tooltips. So, the house head can legitimize bastards, call members of the house to war, blah, blah, blah. As you gain, what is it called? Splendor or Renown? Renown. Your dynasty prestige will slowly increase, which lets you buy various bonuses, and it makes your... I'm gonna scale down the UI again since I'm actually streaming in the same resolution that the game is running in. So hopefully that won't make it too bad, but it's really not designed to scale up over 100%. Let's go to that. Yeah, as you can see, there should be this whole thing down here, like open legacies. You can buy a bunch of bonuses as your dynasty levels up, which is kind of as you'll go on. Because the important thing about this game is that rather than playing one character or playing one nation like you do in EU4 or Stellaris, you play one branch of one dynasty. So when this character dies, his dynastic son will inherit his lands, and we will start playing that character. There's no specific goal. I tend to use achievements to guide what I'm doing in any particular game, and there is an achievement for conquering all of Ireland, which I already have. So there's not much point in me having achievements turned on. But you're free to do whatever you want. So some people like to try and paint the entire map in one color, so they do a world conquest. Some people like to, do ahistorical things, like, for example, make the Cathars huge and take over Spain with them is one option. Lots of stuff you can do. But it's really up to what you want to play. So for the purposes of a tutorial, we're going to just move towards uniting Ireland. So we want to unite Ireland and still be holding it, when the tutorial ends. So after the House Dynasty, we have our religion tab. So you have religions, which are like a branch, like a huge umbrella, and then under that you have faiths. So most of Ireland is insular Christianity, and then, so we have Scotland and Britain and so on are Catholic, as is most of Europe in 1066. But if we look over here, so here we have, Conosco. Over here, it goes into Tengri, the Indians worship all kinds of different things. Remember that in this era, having a different religion wasn't something that you just shrugged off. It was, wars were fought over this, and in a big way too. So underneath religion you have faith. So you have the religion umbrella, and generally everyone under one umbrella will get along okay. Not necessarily amazingly, but they're not, as long as it's not heresy, then they're not likely to have huge problems with each other. And so, for example, Catholic and insular are both Christian faiths, okay? Now, faith can either be unorganized or unreformed, organized or unreformed. So, unreformed faiths are always pagan, and the idea is that by reforming, they take on some aspects of Christianity in order to, or other organized religions, in order to better resist being stamped out. So by going over this, you can check what your tenets are. So each faith has 3 tenets, which give it various bonuses. So in our case, we have monasticism, vow of poverty, and pastoral isolation, which is helpful since pastoral isolation really helps us not get into fights, and we're fairly well isolated from what's going on. Like England and Scotland are going to be tied up for a long time with William the Conqueror's war, and then Vikings will raid from over here and mess with us. Alright, that's reformation rather than organization. But the term reforming, sorry, I have chat going as well, so I'm trying to respond to that. That's like the Christian Reformation, Martin Luther and all that, compared to the organization of a religion, but they called that Reformation because technically it is a reforming, but not in the Christian sense of the Reformation. That's like proper noun Reformation as opposed to noun Reformation. So here, sin traits, if you have them, then you have opinion penalties and get less piety. If you have the virtue traits, then you get improved opinion and bonus piety. The catch here, of course, is that some sin traits are really good. Like lustful is just generally a really good trait to have, especially for the extra fertility, because having more kids is pretty important when, you know, nations are being handed around based on blood ties and lineage. And for example, you don't really want chaste as a ruler. You may not want, and like compassionate doesn't do you any favors as a ruler either, because dread is so good. So this is stuff to think about, but you don't have to worry about it too much. Doctrines basically tell you like how the faith looks in a broad scope. So this is male dominated, so generally only men can be in power. Pluralist basically makes it harder to convert and be converted. Theocratic means that temple holdings are leased out, as it says, and ecumenism means that we consider other Christian faiths that are ecumenical to be astray rather than hostile, so we don't really hate them that much. And then it talks about, you know, what kinds of marriage you can have, what acts are considered criminal, and how the clergy works, and if you have any special doctrine. So in this case, we have teachings of Jesus. So religion is really important. When you start a game, one of the things that you should double check is what your religion is, because it has a huge impact on how you play the game. Remember that religion wasn't, like, at this point in history, it wasn't like a thing that you either, you know, you either were into a religion or you weren't. You would be born into a religion, and it would have a huge impact for the whole of your life. Something else to be mindful of is holy sites. For each ruler of your faith, so you don't have to own all of them. For each ruler of your faith that owns a holy site for your faith, all members of that faith gain a bonus. So in this case, the only one that we hold is Armagh, which is over here. It's not held by us, but it's held by an insular ruler. So we get the bonus of having extra learning per level of devotion and an extra 5% monthly piety. So pretty good. There's also Iona, which will help us convert the British Isles if we wanted to go there, and Canterbury over in England, and Rome and Jerusalem, of course, being Christian faiths. So again, this isn't, unlike with your dynasty, you really need to at least read and understand what your religion lets you do at the start of a game, since it's probably the most immediate impact on what actions you can and can't take and how you might want to play. The last tab down here is the culture tab. So culture is the other thing that does what you can do, decides what you can do, not to the extent that it did in Crusader Kings 2. It's much nicer than that. The main thing is that as you proceed through the game, you begin having innovations. This is the new technology mechanic compared to CK2. It's very, very different. Technology is for the entire culture group, not individual realms. And only the person who is the cultural head, so that's the person of that culture who has the most counties of that culture in their realm, county being the smallest thing you can have, so like a province in EU4 terms. They get to decide what the current fascination with, so the fascination bonus, the fascination gives a 25% bonus to the progress of whatever technology you're researching. So in this case, as it says, there's a 30% chance to gain nearly half a point of progress per month, and you need 100 points of progress to go on. You need to reach a certain amount of innovations from one era to progress to the next. So, for example, to get into the High Medieval era, you need to have found at least half of the early Medieval era innovations. And some innovations are locked behind specific cultures. For example, longships, you basically need to be a Viking. It does tell you what you need for everything, which is good. So we have all of the tribal era innovations because we started in 1066, which you can see down here in the bottom right. And this is what we've currently got going. So we've already researched mangonels and household soldiers and a couple of other things. At the moment, we're researching hereditary rule, which lets us enact partition instead of confederate partition, which sucks. It is also possible for an innovation to have exposure, which basically means that you're adjacent to someone who has that innovation. So in this case, we're adjacent to people who know battlements, so we're getting an extra bonus from that, which is plus 40% because we have the same religion as the Georgians. Okay, that's weird. You guys really interested? Oh, no, I see you're Orthodox, but yeah, same religion, not same faith. So the problem is that because we have really low learning, that's going to go up really, really slowly. So on to the rest of the UI, up in the top right. Up here, we've got our current gold and our current income. So the 38 is how much gold we've got. And the plus 3.2 is how much we're getting. If you mouse over it, then you can see what you're getting and what you're spending it on. Next on, you have prestige. Prestige is basically a measure of how well, not necessarily how well regarded, I guess it is a measure of how well regarded you are. This is you on a personal basis as opposed to renown, which is how well off your dynasty is considered. So as that grows up, you get various advantages, mostly in the form of opinion bonuses, so people will like you better. But it's also used as a currency for certain things. Piety is basically like prestige, but for religion. It's how faithful or how well you serve your faith you are regarded to be. There are big advantages to being a good member of your faith. And again, this is used as a currency for certain things. And then we have renown, which I talked about earlier. This over here tells you how many soldiers you have raised, how many you have max, and what their quality is at a glance. So we have 107 soldiers. We have, the bar is full, so as you can see, so that means that we have as many soldiers as we can possibly have. And the double diamond means that they're of decent quality now. Let's break this down a bit for the tooltip. Levies are your basic incredibly shit unit. Levies have 10 damage and 10 toughness. Damage is how much damage they do in a fight. Toughness is how much damage they reduce the enemy from dealing in a fight. So consider 10 and 10 to be the most basic stats that you can have. Like, it would be unusual for anything to be worse than that. The knights, on the other hand, knights have an additional skill called prowess. If I open this up, you can actually see here, this is prowess, so prowess 10. So for every point of prowess, a knight gets 100 damage and 10 toughness. So I have toughness 10. So this character fighting as a knight has 1000 damage and 100 toughness. So he individually is worth several hundred levy troops. Okay. Knights are really powerful, really important. They're also known as champions, or other things as it mentions in the tooltip. Try and get good knights and hold on to them. It matters a lot. The last important thing is quality. Quality is basically a measure of the ratio of your men-at-arms and knights to your levies. Having more men-at-arms and knights is preferable, and having much less than your levies is very bad. Remember that levies, like in this day and age, you wouldn't have like big, huge standing armies most of the time. Rome was an exception, obviously, and also Rome conquered like, most of the known world at the time. So, there are advantages to having a standing army. But your levies are basically peasants that you conscripted and shoved a sword and shield in their hands and said good luck. Which is why they suck so much. What quality, the main thing about quality is that it gives you an indicator. Like, if you have two armies of 3,000 men and one of them is higher quality than the other, the one with higher quality will probably win. Not necessarily, but probably. Finally, over here we have a quick look at your domain. So you can only hold directly so many holdings. So, for example, I can hold up to 5 holdings because, I'm a Duke and I have this stuff and my stewardship gives me +1 and blah, blah, blah. If you go over, then some of your buildings will turn off and people will start getting mad at you for being over the holding limit. So, and also it's important to remember that you can only hold certain holdings for your type. So, for example, with the way that Insular Christianity works, I shouldn't be holding temple holdings. I should be leasing them out to priests who then become my theocratic vassals. So, going down to the bottom right, we have this, which lets you look up all kinds of stuff. So you can immediately jump to your capital, you can check for a title, find a character. This one is really, really useful. I'll show you something you can do with that very shortly. This opens up the in-game menu. This lets you open up the in-game encyclopedia to look stuff up. You can use that, but I would also recommend that you play with the wiki open. If you just Google CK3 wiki, you'll find it, but if you're watching this on YouTube, I will put a link in the description below. Now, going on to the right, we have the date. See how it's currently redded out? That means that it's paused. The game can run when it's unpaused, it can run at 3 speeds. 1 is excruciatingly slow, and 5, it basically ticks as fast as your computer can possibly handle. I think most people would probably play on 2 or 3 most of the time, and then tune it up in periods of waiting, because you are going to have periods in this game where you just end up waiting for stuff to happen. That's part and parcel of the experience. Finally, over here on the right, you have an outliner. If you've played EU4 or Stellaris, then you'll be familiar with this. So this lets you check on your holdings, your crown authority, which I'll talk about later, the vassals you have, how your succession works, and so on. That reminds me, should this be a different... okay. Worry about that later. Below that, you have the military menu, where you can check how many levies you have, you can check out who your knights are. Since my player air kind of sucks at fighting, might make an okay commander though, I'm actually going to forbid him from fighting as a knight. Definitely don't want that to happen. And so you have the option to create men-at-arms. Now, I'll talk about this in a bit more depth later, but this is really important, so just remember that this is here. Counsel tab lets you check your counsel. This being over here instead of in the top left is really kind of painful if you played CK2. I still try and click up here in the top left and then up over here on the right. So these 5 people plus your wife, who gives you bonuses if you have one, are basically part of helping you run the realm. Now, there's a lot of stuff to unpack there, but for now just remember that this is here. Then you have your court, where you can check up on everyone who's hanging out at your court, which is, if you've seen Game of Thrones or read any fantasy book, remember this is a court full of nobles, so they all have their own stuff that's going on. This is the intrigue panel, so you can use this to check on any hostile schemes. So if you're plotting to murder someone, it'll show up here. If you're trying to, let's say, seduce someone, it will show up here. And anything that you found out will show up down here. So for example, if you found out that someone is planning to murder you, it will be here. And this lets you check on any hooks you have. So this is you basically saying, okay, I know this about you, so, you know, what's it worth it to you to have me keep quiet about it? And any secrets that you know about. And also anyone who is doing that to you, or if you have secrets that you don't want people to find out about. Factions tab is really important. So if anyone in your realm doesn't like you, then they may try and start a faction, which could be for a peasant revolt, or it could be that they want to install a pretender on the throne, so someone else who has a claim to the throne might try and get, you know, your vassals to aid them and be like, hey, I'd be a better king than this guy is. So you can use this to keep an eye on that. Finally, we have the decisions tab, which works just like the decisions tab in CK2 did. I guess, to draw a comparison with Stellaris, it would probably be like edicts. So these are various options that you can take that often have quite a big cooldown. So for example, if they go on a pilgrimage, you can't do it again for 15 years and it costs money, but you get various bonuses. Finally, there's the map realms down here. These are pretty self-explanatory. The really irritating thing about it is that unless you control click on a realm, you can't see its vassals in realm mode. So the direct vassals map mode no longer exists, which isn't a big deal, but you do need to be aware of it if you're coming over from CK2. So, having talked about that, so now we know where everything in the user interface is, let's check out our lands. So, we own Munster, and we have Munster being this petty kingdom, which is a duchy. So, you have 4 tiers of title. You have county titles, ducal titles, kingdom titles, and empire titles. So, and you can see this if you check out, actually I'll click on the, for the Ultima Film one. So if you check here, see where it says de jure part of. So this is the Ultima Thermon, which is a county title. It's de jure part of the Petty Kingdom of Munster, which is now lit up on the screen. De jure means by law. So this is like the traditional land that is considered to be part of the Petty Kingdom of Munster. The alternative term that the opposite term that you've probably heard of before is de facto, which is like in fact. So you have de jure, which is like by law, and you have de facto, which is in fact. So de jure, Canis and de jure Desmond belongs to us, but de facto, it's ruled by Moridak MacCarthach. I'm not very good at Irish names, which is kind of weird since I'm like 75% British. Yeah, I have a simp in chat. Hello, simp. So Munster is then de jure part of Ireland, which is this whole island right here, and then that is part of the Empire of Britannia, which covers, or Brittany, or Britannia, which covers the modern day United Kingdom. So everything in the game is organized into these 4 tiers. So Empire is the highest, and if we can actually go all the way back, so you can see here at the moment it's on realms, so this tells us what each individual realm is like. Then if we go to, say, duchy titles, we can see each individual duchy that makes it up. So above that you have kingdoms, and then above that you have empires. These are de jure, of course. If you compare the empire to the realm, it's not quite like that. So for example, normally the Byzantine Empire would span, you know, all of this, but in reality, it's a lot smaller because it's lost a lot of lands. And for example, this should normally be, you know, split up between 3 empires, but in reality, it's ruled by Camargue. So understanding those tiers is really important. It will really inform how you can make decisions about what's in the game, what you're shooting for. So for example, if we want to unite Ireland, let's just check that out. So you can see here there's a red border around the title. So that means that it doesn't exist at the moment. No one is the King of Ireland. To create, and if we click it, it will show us what we need to do to create it. So we need to have we need to control 8 counties that are considered by law to be part of Ireland. And we need to own 2 duchy titles within Ireland and have the 500 gold to basically pay to have this title created and have people recognize the legitimacy of it. So, our goal eventually is to own those 8 counties and have the money and have the duchy titles. So, first of all, the only land that is de jure part of the Petty Kingdom of Munster that we don't own is Desmond. So, we now have our first move. We should try and get a hold of Desmond sooner rather than later. Really, we should expand and either vassalize or conquer Desmond as soon as possible so that we own this entire block, this whole duchy. And then if we look at the duchy menu, so we can see the rest of Ireland is in these 4 duchies. We have Ulster up here, Connacht, Meath, and Leinster. So we need to take over at least 1 more of these and create the title before we can become king. On top of that, we already own 3 counties. We need to own 8. So after taking Desmond, we'd have 4. So then we'd need to take over 4 more counties. Realistically, we will probably take over Leinster and Meath because they're currently pretty messed up. They're all single counties, so what you call 1 province minor in EU4. So they're not very strong. Of the rulers that you can start as in Ireland, Merchad is by far the strongest. My phone is going off because it's 1 AM, so Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions has to tell me all kinds of things. Connacht is pretty strong. They have... The catch is that while they own 2 counties like we do, they don't have a vassal. Whereas we do. We have Ormond, which is held by this guy, who is apparently Norse. No? He's just Norwegian culture. Okay, that's weird. So they're much weaker than us simply by virtue of the fact that we have more land and, we have a vassal who is paying us taxes and providing us troops, and they just don't have that. Now, I want to talk about this real quick because it's a big difference from CK2. You'll notice that if I zoom right in, you can see that each county is actually divided up into separate parts, and these parts each have their own terrain and their own supply limit. This matters way more than it did in CK2. If you go over the supply limit, you will start taking attrition losses really quickly, and they really add up. Like, you cannot just doom stack over things like you used to, or not with anywhere near the same degree of success. A lot of people seem to be getting tripped up by that at the moment, so I want to talk about it and get it out of the way right now. For example, you can see here, Ennis is in these 2 bits, and then Ormond is in these 3 bits, and Desmond is in 1, 2, 3, 4 bits. Some places have even more, like Dublin is in 5 bits. The advantage to having more partitions in your counties is that you can basically, for each of these there's a building slot. So in that regard it's similar to CK2, but the fact that they're partitioned up now matters when you're moving troops around, so just keep that in mind. Now, let's look at our guy. So this is us picking Merchant of Munster. Here's how old we are, here's how healthy we are. Over here we have the player F, so we'll begin playing this character when Merchad dies. This tells us their orientation, so heterosexual. Coffee break. So, heterosexual, kind of good. Makes it a lot easier to have children. That really mattered back in the day, because if you passed without issue, right, so you died and you didn't have a kid, then, succession crisis, wars, whole kingdoms were like destroyed by this historically, so it's important. We also our religion allows us to have concubines, or in this case there are secondary spouses, but only the primary spouse gets the main bonuses, and their kid is considered like more along as your heir. You may need to be careful with secondary spouses with high intrigue, because they may attempt to knock off your primary wife and install themselves in their place. So at the moment we're unmarried, we will fix this, but shortly. Down here you can see what traits we have. So we have Temperate, which gives us various bonuses. You can check in the tooltips. Temperate, Wrathful, and Impatient, which aren't spectacular, but it does mean that we have a high military score, which is kind of good because we're going to be at war a lot. We start off with a tier 3 education trait. So every character in the game has an education trait. Your education trait corresponds to one of the 5 core stats. So this is the tier 3 trait for military, or martial. So you get +6 martial and bonus lifestyle experience. So if you can't pick what lifestyle you want, like you don't have anything specifically in place, picking the lifestyle that corresponds to your learning trait won't hurt, basically. And then any other traits that we pick up will go over here. So for example, if this character is commanding, then they get bonuses in hills and mountains and wetlands, which is pretty good because Ireland has a lot of plains, but it also has a lot of hills and wetlands. Lots of islands, wetlands. It's a pretty muggy place. These are the stats in question. So diplomacy helps you be liked, having good diplomacy. So anything over, what is it, 8, 7? I think it's 10 is what I want to consider average in this. So if you have good diplomacy, then everyone gets an opinion bonus towards you. You get more prestige, blah, blah, blah. Martial is how good you are at commanding, and it increases both the size of your levies and how quickly they reinforce. So it's a big deal if you're going to be at war a lot. Stewardship is basically about running your realm and making money. Intrigue is about doing spy shit, so plotting, finding secrets, blackmailing people, and so on. Learning is kind of a mix of things. It's both how good you are at religion, like, so for example, a biblical scholar in modern times wouldn't have high learning, but it's also a measure of how educated you are. So, I mean, in comparison to in this day and age, probably anyone who has enough knowledge to be watching this would have a learning stat of like 25. Okay? But it's not necessarily the most useful stat in the world, but it's sometimes really important, especially if you're trying to convert everything. Like, say you've created a new faith and you want to convert everything to it, or your faith is a heresy, like you're a Cathar, and you want to convert people, then having high learning matters. Prowess I talked about before, and down here you can see what titles you have, what claims you have. So if you have a claim, right, that's basically, a claim is recognized at least by enough people or by a legitimate enough authority that you basically are considered to have grounds to claim it. So for example, we have a claim for the Kingdom of Ireland, so either we've bullshitted enough people, or the Pope likes us enough, or, you know, our father, I think in this case it's, yeah, our grandparent was the King of Ireland and it fractured after he died. So we are 2 generations down, but the rightful heir to the throne of Ireland, basically. So if we, you know, declare war because we're trying to reunite Ireland, then people will be like, oh, okay, that's fair enough. You know, they might be mad that you declared war on them, but they won't consider it to be like an injustice that you declared war. So down below that, you can check out everything that you've got going on. So you can check out your family, any relationships you have, like if you have friends, lovers, rivals, and so on. You can double check who your vassals are, and you can double check who's in your court. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Um, it's been 40 minutes, we haven't unpaused the game. The game hasn't ticked at all. But now we know where everything is. So, and I've sort of explained at least a little bit what everything you can see does, because understanding the UI is really, really important. So, now we get to think about what our first move is going to be. So, first of all, let's check out down here. So, we can offer vassalization to him, and we are his rightful liege. We are the Duke, the petty king of Munster, and Desmond is, by law, part of Munster. So, he has a good, by law, he should be serving us. He shouldn't be independent. So, the thing at the moment is that he's not really inclined to join us because, he's independent. He's his own boss. He doesn't want to come and work for us and pay us taxes and, send us his men, his small folk to go and die in our levies. And, that's fair enough, but we want Desmond. Now, what we could do is have low feudal obligations. Now, feudal obligations, if you're a vassal, basically are how much tax you pay to your liege and how many men you contribute to their levies. Now, we could offer him low feudal obligations, but we really need to scrape for whatever we've got. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put that on back burner for now, and we're going to look at what our council are doing. So, that's not the council tab. The crown icon was the council tab in CK2, and to this day I continue to screw it up, even though it's not like I've been playing a small amount of this game, okay? So, your councillors have various benefits. First of all, you need your own priest to like you. If they like you, you endorse them, and all of your church holdings that are leased to your priests, technically your court bishop who is dispatched by the Pope, or the head bishop or whoever, someone higher up in the chain, your priests technically report to this guy, and then he reports to you. So if he doesn't like you, he's not going to pay any taxes to you. He's just going to keep all of their taxes to him, for him. So having your priest like you, big deal. You really want to make that happen. Now, each council can do 3 things. So, for the bishop or head of your religious guy, they can do this. So, religious relations gives you bonus pay per month, gives you bonus to opinion for all of your insular theocratic rulers. So that means your priests, for example, will like you more. It also means that, for example, and this is mostly for if you are, Catholic, but if you're Catholic, that bonus would also apply to the Pope. By definition, under normal circumstances, it would also apply to your head of religion. But if we look at our religion thing, do we have... Wait, are we... I'm being done. I am trying... Okay, so there is no head of faith because Inshallah doesn't have a head of faith. So the advantage to that is that its fervor can't go below 50%. Low fervor makes it easy to make new faiths and increases the likelihood of characters and characters converting, and makes it more likely that you'll get heresy. And having high fervor lets you wage holy wars like Crusades and so on. I actually think this system, it's kind of janky at the moment, but I think it could be really good, so I'm excited to see what happens in later DLCs, assuming they don't cock it up like they did with Leviathan. So, the other things they can do, he can convert counties to your faith, but our counties are already in Chile, so that's fine. Or you can assign them to fabricate claims, right? Because back in the day, it's not like you were elected, right? Yeah. I don't think women in lakes handing out swords is a good way to make a government. The kings were said to rule by divine right? So, they ruled because, God said so. Okay, like the divine right of kings. Or in China, you had the imperial mandate, and I'm sure Japan has the same thing, but I don't remember what it's called. But like that's a thing. So you can have your priest basically schmooze it with enough people to be like, oh yeah, this guy is totally, legitimately someone who should be in charge of those lands, even though you're not. So for now, he can just stay doing that. There are side effects which the game tells you about. So in this case, he might randomly increase the opinion of a vassal, or he might cock it up and cause us to lose piety, or upset a vassal. But these things happen. For the Chancellor, this is your diplomatic guy. Now, before anything else, see this little fist icon? This means that the ruler is considered a powerful vassal. So, in fact, let's bring out the tooltip. So they have the most soldiers and the highest income. They expect to be on the council, and they have someone in my chat is like, oh, that's why priests fabricate claims. In CK2, this was actually the job of your diplomatic councilman, but it makes more sense to be on priest, I think. Especially in in this day and age. Or should I say in that day and age, it probably makes more sense for the religious guy to be doing it. Powerful vassals, as it implies, they are the strongest vassals in your domain. They expect to be on the council and will be displeased with you if they're not. Someone's saying in EU4 it spies. That's because by the time of EU4, the premise of the divine right of kings was starting to go away. Royalty still existed, but it was rapidly having its power diminished in favour of the nobility, like the noble aristocracy, and the merchant princes, the burghers. So, a big part of the reason why spies should do it in EU4 and not priests is for the very simple reason that it makes more sense for spies to fabricate documents indicating that someone is actually descended from so-and-so, because while people weren't really keen on the whole divine right idea by that point, they were still lineage was still like the deciding factor in succession to rulership. Very, very few places at that point were officially being run by an elected government. If I remember rightly, England during that stage, I mean, even today, but especially today, but even in that stage, I believe that the monarch at that point was mostly in the process of signing off on things for their parliament. I might be wrong about that. I'm Australian, so most of my historical studies in school were about white guilt, basically. So I learned a lot about history and geography from looking things up that I found out playing Crusader Kings. Way more than I did in class. So anyway, Chancellor, you're a diplomat guy. So you can have him on foreign affairs, which gives you more prestige and makes nearby independent rulers like you more. It can also, and this is important if you're going to wars a lot, normally after a war there's a big truce period where you can't fight people. This has the side effect that it can cause that to happen. Domestic affairs is basically the same thing, but for internal rulers, so it will improve vassal opinion. You can get good bonuses like improving feudal contracts or screwing up people who work under you. And finally, if you have a kingdom or empire, they can integrate title. Now what this does is that it takes a title that is normally not de jure part of your realm. So, for example, let's say I became King of Ireland, okay? Now, we know Ireland de jure is just this land over here. We can check that out on the kingdom menu. See, Ireland, just this bit. So, let's say, there's a strait here. So this is adjacent to me, right? Let's say that I took over I can't pronounce that. This place. And I wanted to say, hey, this is actually part of Ireland. So what I could do is I could set Chancellor onto that, and it'd take like 100 years, but eventually he'd get enough documents, enough people saying yes, he'd have bribed enough people, he'd have smooshed with enough people to get people to agree that yes, this is by law part of Ireland. That actually does have some really big benefits. For example, on this Kingdom Road, as you can see, this is normally part of Scotland, right? But if I integrated the title, then this bit down here that I was talking about would become part of Ireland by law. So on this map mode, we'd have this nice green splodge here where we'd taken it. It also means that, for example, if I conquer this right now, so this guy, as you can see, this is part of the Sorija, which is part of Scotland, which is part of Britannia. If I conquered this guy, but I didn't own this duchy, I wouldn't be his rightful liege, right? I wouldn't have the right duchy title. Or if I didn't have the Kingdom of Scotland title, for example, I wouldn't be his rightful liege. And in fact, if I conquered him and Scotland felt like it, they would seriously consider declaring a war for that, because this is by law part of their lands. Integrating the title would resolve that, so they would stop having a penalty in their opinion towards me, because I would then be their rightful liege, and Scotland wouldn't really care to go to war for it, because it by law this isn't part of their land anymore. So that's what that does, but it takes forever to use. As near as I can tell, people don't really use it. It's not good. So Steward, this is your money guy. Their default state is to collect taxes, which gives you a bonus to your domain taxes, and sometimes they can just give you a lump sum of money, or bad things can happen. You can also set them to increase development. Now, development is a bit complicated. Basically, the more developed a country is, the better it is. The more developed the county is, the better it is. So, more levies, more taxes, more supply limit, and if I remember correctly, development also plays a role in how quickly you discover technologies, because the average development gives a bonus to discovery progress. Also, if you have multiple cultures, so let's check out cultural map mode. So this is mostly Irish, right? But if I conquered Dublin over here, then the people living in it wouldn't be happy, right? Because they're Norwegians, but being ruled by an Irishman. So what we can do is we can set our steward to promote Irish culture and try and convince the people of Dublin to, take up Irish ways and begin seeing themselves as Irish. And then they won't be mad for being ruled by a foreign ruler, because I'm no longer foreign, they're Irish too. England, is it England that has, as I recall, I'm not sure if CK3 has it, but CK2 has events where you get like melting pot cultures, like the Normans and so on, where cultures kind of like fuse, for example. And depending on what you're doing, changing cultures could be really useful. For example, it's like we're not doing so good, right? We've got 6 out of 17 early medieval innovations. If we go over to India, who's the biggest cheese in India? Let's try you. So what culture are you? You are... these guys already have 10. And is there a technology? No, there's not. Okay. These guys have 10. Nepali have 8. Bengals have 10. Whereas if we go over here, for example, the Cumans are still tribal. Okay, they haven't even reached the early medieval era. Whereas the Greeks are doing really well. Yeah, and then it kind of gets worse as you go further and further west. Muslims tend to be really well advanced. Oh, okay, that's obviously changed from CK2. But they have like a crap ton of tribal innovations. They get like war camels and stuff. In CK2, to reflect the advances that Muslim Egypt and so on made in like writing and record keeping and mathematics in comparison to Western countries at the time, they tended to have really good tech, so they would be a good choice to send to. What are the Italians doing? They're not doing that well, that's kind of weird. In CK2, again, because technology was per nation, the papacy would often have like absurdly high technology and would make it a really good place to send spies to steal technology. So, but like, if you had like a culture that was like just barely tribal, and you got the opportunity to convert to a culture that was, midway through the medieval era, then you could do that and then try and start converting all of your provinces so they could take advantage of the cultural technology. Now, the marshal is kind of important. They basically handle how good your levies are and so on. So, like, for example, their normal function is that they will increase the size and rate of your levies and the rate at which they reinforce, as well as how many guys are the garrison in your castles and stuff during sieges. You can also have them try and find or train knights, so you can make your individual knights and commanders better. And if you have low control in a county, then you can send your marshal to kind of crack down on people and tell them to stop screwing. So, control is like the opposite of autonomy in EU4. It represents how much of a grip you have on the county. So, low control means that the small folk are kind of just doing whatever the fuck they want. And, they're not paying taxes, they're not contributing levies properly, who knows what they're doing. High control means that, they're not very autonomous, they have proper oversight, they have proper instruction as what to do, they're properly paying taxes and levies and so on. And then, finally, you have the Spy Master. So, his roles are pretty simple. You can tell him to disrupt schemes, so basically he looks for people who are trying to run schemes, like trying to murder people or so on. If you get word that someone is trying to kill you, then you want to set your way to this. Or you can have him support your schemes if you're trying to do stuff. Or you can send him to send secrets, like in another court. So for example, say you want to make someone work for you, and in like a murder plot or something in another court, you might send your spy master over there and be like, find me secrets, and then if you find a big enough secret, then you blackmail the person into like going along with your murder plot, for example. Because the more people that you have helping you to murder someone, the more likely it is to go off. Now, at the moment, I'm pretty much just going to leave these as they are. I'm maxed out on knights, so I don't need to worry about training them too much. And at the moment, having peasants is probably best. So, our council's in an okay spot. I mean, I would like better councillors, but I don't really have any. So there's only so much I can do about that. However, what I can do is make my nephew, like I could, for example, make my nephew my spy master, but this guy's stewardship is really garbage, so I would be swapping for no gain, and like I don't have someone with better stewardship, so no point in doing that. So, we've determined that these guys can sit around where they are for the moment. No problem. Next, let's look at us. So we have alerts up here informing us that there's stuff going on. So for example, first of all, we should choose a lifestyle. So we started out, when you go to pick a lifestyle, there's one corresponding to each stat, and then each one has 3 focuses. That's it. I'm going to drink something because I'm talking a lot. So, first you pick what stat, and then you pick what focus you want, which gives you various bonuses, can cause certain events and so on. And then you get the option to start buying perks off a tree. So in this case, we started with the Overseer tree nearly filled out, which gives us all these bonuses. Right? And later on we can get Overseer, which gives us the Overseer trait, which gives us all of this good stuff. Since we have a martial education, and we're going to be at war for a while, we are going to take chivalry focus. Now, the reason for that is because we're going to be commanding a lot, and we really want the extra advantage and the extra prowess, because we might end up fighting on the battlefield. So we're going to go with chivalry focus, but you can only change this every 5 years, so make sure that you've got this on what you want before you commit to it. So every month we get 32 martial experience, and then when that hits 1,000 we get a new perk, which is one of these. But we'll get events and so on as we go through that will make it much easier for us to develop our martial experience. So that's one down. Next up, our heir has no spouse. Now, the marriage game is one of the more complicated aspects of this game. However, what I would like to do is look and see if the King of Scotland has any female heirs, and he does not. He doesn't even have any female siblings. Okay. Because what I would like to do is marry him to someone who can provide us with a good alliance. Okay, so back in this time, you didn't normally make alliances of convenience just out of paper. You made them by blood, so you married between various dynasties. This is one of the reasons why the British nobles became famous for inbreeding, right? Because they kept intermarrying between noble houses. So, for example, what's France doing? France is doing stuff all, but it's currently being ruled by this guy. He does have a sibling. I may consider marrying... Actually, that's a thought. I don't really want this guy to end up as King of France, right? Because that would be annoying. But she's not betrothed, and and she's not in the line of succession, right? So I could say, what if we do this? Okay. And he's saying no because of various things. And his opinion of me isn't great. And for example, I could try sending him a gift, but since he's a king, I'd need 210 gold, and I don't have that. Okay, so that's not happening. So let's go back to finding this guy's spouse. So this tries really hard to give you useful information, but it doesn't always, yeah? Are you the top? You are. So for example, there are really two ways that you can organize marriages if you aren't trying to marry your way into a throne, and I'm personally really, really bad at that, so I'm not going to cover it too much. I'm sure that there are guides you can look up that will explain it in much more detail than I'd be able to. So we're going to focus on the other two things that you marry for. So you can either marry for hereditary traits or for alliances. So, for example, if we look at the King of Scotland, this quick trait, it's really good, okay? +1 to everything, bonus lifestyle experience. Other people can have things like, for example, let's bring up the character finder. Let's say, sure, strong. So, wait, hang on, that's not portrait, it's Amazonian, right? Yeah, Herculean or Amazonian for women. So for example, if you can catch someone with this trait, because it's congenital, there's a chance that any kids that they have will get them. And it's even better, like if Herculean, the wiki goes into this in much better detail, but basically, for example, if two people, like Quick is like the first tier of this ability, if two people with Quick produce a child, there's a chance that the child might have the next better version of Quick. And get even more bonuses. I think it's +3 to everything. So you can marry that way and look to breed in, genetically engineer Superman to be your rulers. Or you can marry for alliance power. So for example, let's say, okay, so Gwynedd is right here, right? This guy has 1,000 dudes, and he has siblings and kids. So, for example, this girl is not spectacular, but I could arrange a marriage with her and my son, right? So, here's what would happen. First and foremost, they get a chance to marriage, they'll be of my house. This is important. So, for example, if your only heir is a girl and they are in a matrilineal and they aren't in a matrilineal marriage, any of their kids will be of the other person's house. And since the game ends when your dynasty runs out, that's a game over condition. So in this case, it's not matrilineal, so all of the children will be of our son's house, which is our house, House Brian. Or Brian? Say Brian. He's not the Messiah, he's a naughty little boy. So, and here we say, you know, if there's any inheritable traits, if there's any chance of children, it does warn you if there's a chance of them being inbred, which is nice. You get prestige based on the relative level of splendor. So we are insignificant and they are what are they? And they are noteworthy. So Brian would get 300 prestige and then the girl would get 200, right? Because she's not marrying down too far. We're both dukes. And we're right next to each other. Now the advantage to that is that England is going to be busy for a long time. Like Gwynedd can hold out for a very long time. And this guy has about 1,000 men. Because we'll have marriage ties, so his daughter will be married to my son, we'll be able to call each other into each other's wars. So by doing this, we end up with a very powerful ally. Well, not insanely powerful, but you know, we have nearly 1,000 men, he has about 1,000 men. We are basically doubling the amount of army that we have access to like this. And he's happy to go with it. So the other thing we could do is team up with their Hubarth, but they're weaker, as you can see. So we're just going to do that. And at the same time, I should also get married. Now, I have a child, but you really want to spare just in case something horrible happens. So, in my case, for example, I will, let's see, I'll sort it and try and marry into something with an inheritable trait. Yeah, okay. And then if it's sort that by prestige gain, okay. Oh yeah, see, this person has a ton of things, so minus fertility, they're a lunatic. But they're good looking and smart. And that may make up for it, depending on who you are. So you can quickly check all of their available spouses. I want someone with decent enough stats in things that aren't military. So I'm going to go with this one. All of her, except for military, which I'm already good at, all of her stats are pretty decent. So I haven't got any prestige, but it is possible that in children that we have, we'll have quick. And I'll be able to use her once she arrives. You can see here there's a slot for my spouse. Your primary spouse is able to apply a fraction of their stats to your stats. So, for example, actually, not for example, I'll show you when we get there. The final thing that we want to do before we unpause is check out this tab, the current situation tab. So this will alert you if there's stuff going on, if anyone should be getting married. I can tell him, for example, no. Okay. Sometimes you can take actions like telling people, you know, okay, you're all good to get married. I think that's only for the, excuse me, how said I'm not 100% sure on the mechanics of that one, but this will tell you if there's anything going on that it thinks you should work with. So for example, it's like, you can declare war here, you don't have enough spouses, so you should, which is part of why we've got a penalty. Like, we don't have enough spouses, we should have 3 because we're a king, so we're taking a piety penalty. Without that, we'd be getting nearly 2 piety per month instead of nearly 1. Okay. So actually, I lied. There is one more thing that we want to do before we get started. So I don't really want to go to war with this guy, right? That would be a waste of resources. But I also don't want to be in a position where... oh, hold on. Can I... No, okay. It's not good. I don't want to have him with like a low value feudal contract, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click him and I'm going to say sway. So as you can see, this has a 50% chance every month of increasing, not every month. Yeah, you can see it all in here. So every month there's a 40% chance to progress. It should take about 2 years, and it has a 50% chance of going off. But we'll get events during this that might raise his opinion anyway, that might increase the success rate, that might give us more progress. So we'll start doing that, and we're basically going to try and get on this guy's good side so that we can just make him a vassal, no questions asked, right? One more thing is we should have some men-at-arms, but at the moment we can't afford any. And I don't think we can raid. Just a moment. Yeah, because we're not pagans, we can't raid. So we're just going to have to get money the hard way. So now, after an hour and 10 minutes, we are ready to unpause. In a normal game, of course, like I would do this very, very quickly and not really worry about it. I tell a lie, there's one more thing that we're going to do before we unpause. See this? My court position? You really want a court position. So first things first, let's look at our court and see if there's anyone with a really good learning score. Because learning is the primary indicator of how good someone is as a physician, right? So this person has 11, which is, okay, it's pretty average. Or we can say search for a physician and it will generate some characters that... It'll generate one kind of okay character and one pretty good character. Doing this is free, but we'll have to pay them when they show up. So we'll just have to see what happens there. So now we unpause and the game will happily run along. So since I unpaused, things began running, so it went and checked with the other guy if it was okay if we married, and then they sent information back. As you can see, 3 days have progressed. We started on the 15th, it's now the 18th. A day is about the smallest tick that the game really cares about, but most things will tick monthly. So for example, at the end of every month, we get our monthly income. So we'd go from 38 to 41.2. And we'd go from 600 prestige to 601.9 prestige, and so on. So a big part of this game, you'll find out, is that you really are just, like, you may set things up and then just sit and wait. So for example, I often have, television running in the background, and so, I might watch something like, I binged through most of Game of Thrones, which I hadn't watched until a couple of years ago, on one screen, and, while I was waiting for stuff to happen in Crusader Kings 2. It's that kind of game. You don't always need to be pressing buttons. So, when you get a pop-up like that as well, the game will automatically pause. As you can see down here, it's in red and white. Something to be aware of if you're coming from Crusader Kings 2. The way that pausing and unpausing works for pop-ups, and this is slightly different. Some pop-ups will not automatically unpause the game after you dismiss them, unlike in CK2 where they always did, but if you press the pause button during the pop-up, then it would stay paused. It works in the reverse fashion in this game all the time. So, everyone said yes to our marriages, so I am now married. As you can see here, we have a spouse. My bisexual, rational, empath spouse. But the main thing for that is that she's set to assist ruler, right? So she's giving us all of these bonuses, which is huge, right? So our stats after modification are now doing much better. So like, for example, we're now only getting a -1 penalty and a -1% penalty our prestige, to our opinion of prestige, whereas before it was, minus 3%. So it's fairly significant. What I should also do is try and grab in some other spouses, some other people for breeding purposes. So this person happens to be in my court, so I can just do it straight away. It's like, boom, you are now my spouse. And the catch here is that the find spouse button will only work for your first spouse. So for example, if I wanted to find one the other way, I bring up the character finder, which you can either do from the more buttons down here, or you can tap C on a keyboard and we can say, so we want not a ruler, yes adult, female, not married, not free, and this can all says is want the relation diplomatic range to be outside, to be inside, sorry. And we want the relation to be based on the top realm. So these are all the people that we could potentially end up with. None of them, however, have inheritable what is the word that I'm looking for? Inheritable traits, so congenital traits. So while I could grab them, for now I'm just going to leave it, because I'm really now that I've got a bonus, I've got one spouse, I'm about to have a bonus spouse, and that will dramatically reduce the penalty that I'm taking. So let's unpause. And now the court physician thing has happened, so we have this guy who is allegedly quite experienced, but his stats don't back that up. He doesn't have the physician trait or anything, he's only got 10 learning. This guy isn't much better though. He might be a commander, but this guy isn't worth the 50 gold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the game and get rid of them. And now in my court, I happen to know for a fact there is someone with, in fact, my wife, who is quite smart, and an administrator. I can... Oh! She's Catholic, I should demand conversion. So, if you look here, there is actually an opinion penalty for being the wrong religion. So, but since she otherwise likes us, and we're the right religion, then we can demand they convert to insular Christianity. So, if we give that a moment to play out, then she converted. So notice that her opinion has actually just gone up because we've just removed that opinion penalty since she's now insular Christian. So we will actually ask her to become our court physician and get her a stipend as a result. Because she's been given a prestigious title, she gets further bonus to us. Now, this opinion thing, big deal. Every character in the game has an opinion of every other character. And those opinions are based not just on direct actions, but whether you're in the same culture group, whether you're in the same faith, what traits you do and don't have between you. So for example, because she has compassionate, she has a penalty of opinion towards people who are callous or sadistic, right? The opinion of characters is really important. So you need to keep an eye on that. If someone's opinion of you is too low, then they, won't do shit for you, basically. They'll reject, marriage offers, they'll try and break alliances, they want nothing to do with you. And opinion can go from minus 100 to plus 100. So this is plus 44. If we look at my counsel, for example, this guy has minus 9 opinion of me, but because we have dread, actually we have no dread at all, I am just a badass. He won't do shit to us. So even though his opinion of us is low, he won't oppose us directly at any rate. So, she's on assist ruler, she is now a physician, and now we wait. So as you can see, the game is happily ticking along. England should still be at war. Yeah. So, they're in the middle of this big multiple-way war. and they have a truce with, Wolf of Sewardson of Northamptonshire. Northampton. British names are weird. Anyway. So yeah, at the moment we're just waiting. You will wait during this game. I could do other things, like for example, I could say pick of our poverty, which would give us this stuff, but I don't want to do that. Because I need that money, right? We're going to be making like ducal titles and then a kingdom title and all this other kinds of shit. I also want to make sure that I build up my prestige. Now the reason for that is that if you look at this, right? So at the moment, the succession rule here is male preference. So men take precedence over women in succession, but it does allow male rulers to have concubines or spouses. And Confederate partition. Now, if you played CK3, this is basically Gavelkind, it hates you. The first thing that you should always try and do is get out from under Gavelkind. Because when this happens, right, basically all the titles will be divided up allegedly fairly, with the player heir being given the primary title, the realm capital, and any de jure titles. So the catch here is, say you have 2 duchy titles, but you want a king, so right, so you don't have a kingdom title. So let's say something bad happens, right? So we have Munster, and we take Leinster, but then we get paused, okay? So this is only 6 counties, it's not enough to make Ireland the kingdom title, right? Because all of these are part of the Kingdom of Ireland. Under partition, what would happen is my player heir, so our primary heir, which at the moment is our son here, Brian Malcolm Chad Brian, he would get Munster, but then our other son would get the Duchy of Leinster, and because they're both duchies, our other son would become independent, right? Because he would no longer be a vassal to this guy, right? They're the same rank. That doesn't make sense. So that would quite literally split our realm in half. So the objective here is that you should either try and keep everything under one tile until you can make a kingdom tile or an empire tile. Like if you're looking at having multiple titles of the same rank, then you need to be in a position to have the de jure title that they both belong to. Otherwise, your succession will be a shit show. It's really quite painful. You will get better at it as you play though. So, one of the things that is important though is that because we are Irish, as you can see here, we have laws. We can go for a tenantry elective, which basically turns into an elective monarchy. But under tenantry, the only valid electors, the only valid candidates for the throne are people of your dynasty. So it is nearly impossible to game over under tenantry elective, and it avoids partition. So you won't get completely screwed by things going in partition. Now, while we're waiting, what I might do, actually I won't spend money on that. Yeah, I'll save up a bit more, and then we'll go and look into men-at-arms. And we're just waiting for this sway scheme to complete. Awesome. So because we appointed her as our physician, she's been working on that, so she gets a small boost to health against diseases, and she gets bonus learning, which is like the main factor in being a physician. So she's been practicing, that's good, she's now like actually valid as a core physician. This is one of those events that I was talking about, that gives us bonuses. So for example, because we have this chivalry focus for our martial lifestyle, we're getting this event where this happens. So here's the flavor, here's the person it's about, so we can either accept it and then we have these possible outcomes, or we can turn it down. In this case, it's pretty binary. At worst, we just get a less good outcome. Whereas if we reject it, we lose prestige and our marshal gets annoyed at us. So if we're going to accept it, we're more likely than not to succeed anyway. So, like, why not, right? And then, you know, we could try again, but, you know, we're more likely than not to get wounded. So I'm just going to let it go. And because we're being, you know, honorable about it, he's like, oh, okay, you're pretty cool, and, you know, likes us more, which is good if he's on the since he's on the council, right? So he has more power in our realm than normal. And we still got a chunk of experience for it, so it's not like that was like really a setback or anything. Now, what I want to check as well is if I can. No, okay. Since I don't have a valid CV because you can't press the island title yet, I'm going to send this guy to go and get a claim on ossuary, which will take 20 months. In CK2, this was random. In CK3, it tends to take longer, in my experience, but it's less likely to just never, like, you don't have that issue that you sometimes get in CK2 where you just never get a claim that you need. As you can hear from me happily typing away, I'm responding to stuff on Discord and so on because I'm literally just waiting at this point. Now, I'm waiting for the sway scheme to complete, I'm waiting to see if I get another kid, I'm waiting for my kid to produce a kid with his spouse, I'm waiting for, you know, this to complete, I'm waiting for, you know, technologies to unlock, for experience to build up, you know, all kinds of stuff. But all we can do in the meantime is wait. I could speed it up, but not everything pauses the game when it shows up. So I don't want to speed it up too much, so I'm just going to let it go. And yeah, this is the downside to having average counsel, is you get these bad side effects. So, you know, here we got native taxes, native growth, native opinion for 5 friggin' years. Whoops. He thought I was flirting with him, so that ended poorly. I might just run that again though. Oh no, I can't. Run it again. Okay, so my options here are that I can either declare war, in which case this guy will become my vassal, but he's not going to be happy with me, and since he'd be a powerful vassal, I don't really want that. So instead, I'm just going to bite the bullet and offer him vassalization at low obligations, and I'll worry about improving it later. Oh, good, I have cancer. So we're off to a flying start. One thing that I love about Crusader Kings, in Paradox games in general, but Crusader Kings specifically, is that the game starts out in like a relatively historically accurate way, and then it just goes off the rails as soon as you unpause. I personally always play on Iron Man, and the reason for that is that I don't find it very fun to like save and like reload a save from earlier. Having stuff like this happen and having to react to it and deal with it is what makes it fun to me. If you don't play like that, that's totally fine too. Like, people get different things out of different games. But even if you are new, I strongly suggest trying it out on Iron Man, or just not reloading saves if you don't want to try Iron Man. And like the added tension adds a lot of excitement to me. Now, cancer is really, really bad, to the surprise of no one. You can see huge health penalty, and tons of other problems, right? So we could say lessen the symptom temporarily, or we can do this. Now, since cancer is going to kill us sooner rather than later, there's basically no downside to trying this, even though it can result in things like you becoming, for example, a eunuch or blinded or whatever. But that's preferable to dying, so we're going to do that. Oh! Okay, so for 5 years we get a massive boost to health. That doesn't completely undo the penalty from cancer, but it helps. On the other hand, we are kind of screwed just at the moment. However, we are no longer on death's door, so there's that. Okay, so this guy is now our vassal. Right? And he wants a counsel position. Since he's actually quite good, I'm going to make him my spy master. I could also, if our priests weren't appointed by, we can't go to our priests, right? Because we don't have revocable clerical appointment doctrine, and we don't have the temporal doctrines. So that's something that religion affects. However, in this case, because this guy's because his intrigue is quite high, and this guy isn't a powerful vassal, we can just swap him straight in. That will do a lot to fix his opinion. So he just went from negative to positive, like significantly negative to very positive, well, pretty positive. And once, for example, once irritated wears off, it'll be plus 19. Things will get better as we go, is what I'm saying. So that's all set. Another option would be to, for example, get a reason to revoke this guy's title and then conquer Desmond so you just owned all 4 of these bits of land yourself. And that's totally a valid option as well. I decided not to do that this time because I wanted to show off more of the systems and how you can vassalize people normally. However, having done that, I'm now going to do 2 things. First of all, we're going to change this guy over until no increased control here, right? Because we lost some in that bad event. But it won't take very long, okay? Because it's already at, how much control is it already at? Yeah, it's already at absolute control, actually. As soon as we're on pause, that will fix itself. And then for this one, I'm going to set him to domestic affairs, which can improve my opinions, but it also has a chance that it will let me increase this guy's feudal contract obligation. So if I click on him and I say modify feudal contract, so this is how land is parceled out, right? So we have this feudal contract which determines how many taxes they pay, how many dudes they contribute to levies, and any special rights they get, right? So for example, later on we could declare, no, I'm not going to talk about that, that's dumb. But for example, we can say, oh yeah, even if we had max crown authority and we were no wars internally, we could say, okay, you guys get one declaration, or we can say, you guys always get a seat on the council, even when the contract is inherited. So what we would like to do is to bring this up back to normal levels, right? Because we made them low to make him agree to become a vassal. And one of the things that this guy can do is improve the feudal contract, so we can make them better. We can have him pay us more tax or give us more men and so on. And as a side effect, our military strength has actually just risen slightly. So now we go back into waiting mode. Okay. Yeah. So this is now gone and our control is back up where it should be. Any quick information events will pop up over here. There is an audio cue which you can keep an ear out for. I normally play with the sound totally off, but I thought I'd put it on this time just so that there was something to listen to other than me. and to give some better feedback when I'm, clicking and panning on things. So how's England doing? Okay, yeah, he's winning against Harold Hardroller, but he is losing against William the Conqueror. Normally William's event troops are so good that he will, beat the crap out of England, but it's entirely possible that he won't. And you really don't know what will happen. Oh, it's winter. Okay, so check this out. During winter, oh really? Okay, cool. So we're being called to war here. So he spends 150 prestige, and in return, we jump in and help him conquer this land. And I'm pretty okay with that, actually. So for now, it's really just enough to say we'll raise all of our guys here, we'll be the commander, because our advantage is actually really high. Like we have martial skill is high at 17. We're leading our own guys, so we get an extra +5, and then because we have the chivalry focus, we get +5 on top of that. And I accidentally left the game running. Do note, however, that it is currently winter, right? So as you can see, there's supply loss going on. It's possible to get traits that make you better at fighting in winter conditions. I don't have any at the moment. We do have to spend money to get over there though. But what we're going to do for now is we're just going to roll straight over to here. As you can see, this guy is going to march over here and turn into a boat and then roll over here. This is the embarkation cost. And then they'll go onto land. There's no naval battles in this game. It's all on land. My understanding is that that bit is pretty not historically accurate. This was before the days of gunboat galleons and so on. But the Greeks still had Greek fire and so on. I'm pretty sure there would be naval battles before this. It's just not modern in the game. So we got a new perk. In this case, I'm going to finish this tree and get the overseer trait, which gives us these bonuses. And we can use the extra stewardship. The extra martial is instantly good. Now we finish this trait. So, how many? Yeah, I can't change for a while yet. But then I can pick what we want to do next. So, for example, this one halves the cost of declaring war because you need a casus belli, right? A CV. What I call a CV. So, if you have, for example, a claim, then you can use that to go to war. If you have, if you have another good reason, then you can go to war. So, for example, if I click on and nobody at the moment, see, you need a casus belli because people even back then wouldn't support what they perceived to be an unjust war. And this isn't just a matter of gameplay stuff. Imagine if, as a good Catholic, you declared an unjust war of conquest on a Catholic neighbor, and the Pope was like, "No, that's not cool." Okay, you just pissed off the entirety of Western Christendom. So, you might get excommunicated, and then everyone gangs up on you and beats you up, right? So you really don't want that. In this case, we can check the war details here. So this is a claim on the Principality of the Hubarth, which is this entire area, okay? So if we enforce our demands on that, then they gain the contested title, which in this case is the Principality of the Hubarth. Now that's this area here that's lit up. So we would get all of the lands. Now this is important. See how the Principality is actually includes these lands over here, but they are not actually owned by the guy we're at war with, and neither is, and Ceredigion isn't part of the war target, right? So if we win, we do enough damage to them and we enforce demands, then this guy, our ally, would get all of the lands that this guy owns that are within the Duchy title. So he'd get Difford, Gafford, and Shinog, but he wouldn't get Sardinia. So it's important to know, like, you have to use the right cast spell, you have to target the right guy and target the right title, otherwise you won't get what you think you're going to get out of it. Now, as for war score, you build that in a few ways. The main ones, like the main obvious ones, are by winning battles, right? Like what's going on over here, for example. I might talk about battles more, like, on another video. But, so as you can see, he won that, so we suddenly have plus 31% war score. The other way that you win is by winning sieges. So we're out here, and every day we make 1 point of progress on the siege, and every time the siege progress fills up, we get a new event, which helps ensure that sieges don't stalemate like they sometimes could in CK2. It does mean that sieges on average take longer. And if you siege down every holding in a province, every fortified... Oh shit, that was quick, okay. If you siege down every fortified holding in a province, you gain... you instantly occupy that province, that county, and you will gain ticking war score. So over time, your war score will increase if what you are holding is part of the target. Okay, so we just died. So now we're going to see what's going on. So first of all, here's us. We are arrogant, generous, and impatient. And we're okay at leading. We're not so good at the fighting part, but that can be resolved. We do have a spouse. We have... we're not doing too badly in that regard. But I have... Who's my heir? Anyway, uncle, who is probably going to die soon, so I'm not going to worry about that. And we don't have counselors for some positions. So, let's check. You and you... What are you... Oh, because you're real. Okay. So that's all happily going along. Due to the death that we just had, this is now going along much more slowly. All of that, however, is still going along. We will soon have a claim on that. And our wife is on assist duty. I do need to ask her to convert, which she will, which is good because that will help us. And I do need to get our priest to like us, so I'm just going to start a quick little sway scan against him. I hope that goes well. We should also pick a lifestyle, so in this case we're going to pick another martial lifestyle. This one has started getting overseer. I'm honestly not so thrilled with that one. Since we are bad at prowess and we really need to not die when we're out leading troops, I'm going to go chivalry again. But I'm probably going to go down either the strategist or gallant path. Stalwart leader will help because it will give us more prowess, and chivalric dominance is really strong. Like, I already talked about how good knights are, and this gives them a 75% multiplier, which is ridiculous. And then, King Cloud gives you more knights, for example. It gets better and better. And Peacemaker lets you force demands at 90% instead of 100%, which is enormous when you're trying to, conquer a lot of things quickly. And Gallant is a pretty okay trait, too. Because attraction opinion, so this is a flat opinion boost to everyone, with everyone who's attracted to you. So heterosexual women, bisexual anyone, homosexual men, right? So attraction opinion is good. So for now, let's just focus on this force. So we've got a siege going. I just need to click on these guys, and I will make myself the commander because, like, my advantage is really good. Okay, we've got the siege going down. We do have some attrition going on. The reason for that is mostly just because we aren't attached to friendly ground. But for now, we just gotta wait for the siege to finish. You can potentially assault the fort, but you will take first you need a wall breach, which only occurs when you have siege weapons, and second, you will take a lot of casualties. So when Fabricate Claim completes, you will then need to spend money to like make it a formal thing, since in this case he needs that bribe, for example. So like, yes, we want that because after this is done and we've got our money back and our army has replenished, we're going to conquer Ossory, right? And then we'll conquer Leinster, and then we'll be in a position to make a new duchy and start, conquering our way out this way. So that's done. He's now back on religious relations. Oh, and we are getting the shit kicked out of us while I wasn't looking. Oh yeah, big difference from CK2 is that if you are attacked, if you are in enemy lands, even if they attack you, they are considered the defender. Okay? Because like it's their homeland and so on. So we are going to abandon this actually. No, I need to wait for the late battle phase to come through, which will be in 4 days. 3, 2, 1, boom. So we are actually going to back right off into friendly land. Okay, we're not going to stick around and get beaten up and take tons of casualties. Or that could happen anyway. Okay, that's not great. So I need a new steward. And a new marshal. And neither of them are very good, but that's okay, these things happen. So since we got beaten up, we're now in shattered retreat, so I have no control over this. They are just going to walk all the way over there. Okay, but now we desperately need to get back into this. Where is the capital? To try and stop our guys from getting wrecked. Now, I want to point out this arrow here. See how it slowly fills up? Once it turns white, you can no longer cancel that action. So I could change it and say go over here instead. But they would still have to move to here because it's turned white, so then moving is locked. That's because it used to be really, really simple to just like dance around and never commit to a move. So you could kite people indefinitely in like fights. That's a lot harder to do with a movement lock, and it makes the game a lot more engaging, I find. Are we gonna go there in time? Nope, we are not. But we got there too late to... They lost before I could like run everyone off. So we're gonna run back to there. Don't stick around and fight a losing battle. Retreat as soon as you possibly can. Sure, you'll do. You're actually quite good, so you will really do. Where am I going? All the way over there. Okay. Since we just got the crap beaten out of us, I'm actually going to disband this and basically wait for our levies to fill up again. Oh, apparently disbanded from the area. Okay. So we're going to move out to here and go over here. When you're moving, you can shift click to set waypoints. Otherwise, the game will try and auto pathfind everything, which isn't always useful. However, since we participated at all, this guy's going to be pretty happy with us. I'm kind of tilted that we lost that, but since I don't have any men at arms, it's not really surprising that we didn't punch very well. So we can't really raise our guys for 36 days, but since they are now down, we're getting more monthly income. I really don't have the means to... Oh, that's a problem. I forgot we don't have a court position anymore. I need to... No, I do have a court position. Okay. So now we're just going to wait for this to fill back up. It's happening at 27 points a month because he's on control duty. I'm going to set him back to organising levies and just leave the control where it is, because that will help it refill much more quickly. So it's now gone up to 34 a month. However, because we participated at all, our ally is going to be pretty happy with us. So as you can see there, nothing bad happened, but we didn't succeed in our sway attempt, so the clock restarts, basically. I'll do this for about another 10 minutes and I'll call it quits because my voice is dying and it's got to be like nearly 3 a.m. at this point. I'm not really looking at the clock. I might just abandon this war effort in general and just kind of recuperate. Because how else are we doing? Okay, they've got one. So like, even light footmen, right? They have 16 toughness compared to the 10 that the levies have, and they get these bonus stats. So pursuit, which does more damage after a battle, like you kill more of their troops if you have good pursuit, and screen is the counterpart to that. Man, we got wrecked out there. These things happen. Why are you doing so well? Oh, because you hired like 700 mercenaries out of nowhere. Okay. I was wondering why you suddenly got so strong, but now I know the answer to that. So if you are in deep strife, you can, for example, hire mercenaries. They are not cheap though. They work a bit differently than they do in CK3. Where it's now a one-off cost with no ongoing cost, and the contract is time-based, not conflict-based. But they work in sort of the same way. It can really be worth like saving enough to buy a mercenary company services, like just in case you're getting wrecked and you really need to turn it around, like this guy just did. And as demonstrated, he just, we were winning the war, we had plus 38% war score, and then he just beat the crap out of us with it. Thanks to all the mercenaries that he got. Yeah, that was pretty much over, but I did my bit, so no one can really complain at me. What else do we have? How many dudes did you say? You have about half as many dudes as me. Okay, that should be alright. So see, I actually got bonus. I got prestige out of that because I contributed so much of the war score that we got, and excuse me. our ally is quite happy with us since we, showed up and fought with them. So, having done that, our next step is to go find Osro, right? Because this guy has not enough money to buy mercenaries, and he's half of our strength, so he's basically free. So when we say declare war, we have to pick which casus belli we're going to use, right? So in this case, our objective is to claim ossuary, and if we enforce demands, then we get it. So we get the earldom, and this guy will become our vassal. There are other casus belli that you can use, which can give you, you might just take the title and the guy who currently holds it would become unlanded, or maybe you are in CK3, for example. Nomads had a thing where they could humiliate rival nomads and steal a huge fraction of their manpower. So declaring war does have a cost. So in this case, it's 100 prestige base because the title is claimed, and then we have to pay 25 more because we're a duke and this guy's only a count, right? And the target and which casus belli that you're using, they determine what you get out of it, how much it costs, and so on. So since they are way weaker than us, we are just going to go straight to war with them. Okay, so now we're at war. And I could call this guy in, but I probably don't need to. Raise our guys, and they'll take a little bit to gather. See what it says here, they'll take a couple days to gather. But in the meantime, we can just march them straight across road. Now, this guy only has one built up area. Here's this, right? This castle hold. So this isn't fortified, so we can completely ignore it, and there's nothing in these slots. So all we have to do is take the castle over here. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to march straight in and siege it down again. They do have something of an advantage over us, but I'm pretty confident that we'll do okay since I've got a really good advantage going on here, and I've got twice as many dudes. So when he's actually good, and he's got and he has when he got another set of men at arms. Okay. Yeah, bowmen, one unit of bowmen is worth 2.5 levies. So this 100 bowmen is worth 250 levy troops. So in a battle, both sides do these rolls, right? So you have a minimum roll and a maximum roll, and the advantage shifts as the battle goes on. Basically, the more advantage that you have, the better. So we actually are not doing well at this point. It's going in his favor because of the defensive advantage. But if we keep getting rolls like this, it could shift back in our favor. As you can see, we are actually winning. So we won that one. They broke and ran. So as you can see here, they had 312 guys. They had 450 guys, and we killed 138 of them. And the rest broke and ran. So 312 guys broke off and ran away. Okay. And for it, we got fame, which increases your level of fame, which is over here. So it gives you various bonuses and so on. So for example, we are currently, what are we established? Which is nothing but distinguished. We get bonus opinion from everyone who isn't a clergyman, and we'd be able to have an extra knight. And since knights are really, really powerful, that's really good. So you get fame every time you gain prestige. You get the same amount of fame, but you can also gain it directly through winning battles. And we got 70% war score because we won a battle. So we dismiss that, and then we wait. This guy's fort level is too high. which is kind of bad. So they've got, let's show that holding, yeah. So they've got a castle with bastions and castle walls, right? So that fort level +1, so the fort level is 4. And my guys aren't really good enough for that. Yeah. Oh, and he's got a good bonus for it as well. So, you know, where this is going to take a while without a good event, and as you can see, our siege progress is damaging. Like we're only getting 70% of what we should get because of the fort level being too high. There are specialized men-at-arms that you can use to deal with this, siege engines. So these do basically nothing in real fights, but they give you bonus siege progress, and they can cause siege, like good siege events to happen. They also reduce, so at the moment this guy is fort level 4, right? So if we had any siege engines, even Onojos, which kind of suck, they would basically ignore the fact that he has a fort level of 4 because they're effective up to level 5. So that would ignore the penalty from that entirely. But since we don't have that, we just have to wait. In this case, that was the event. I got sickness spreading, so we get an extra 10% siege progress per day. Now it's 20%. Interesting. So what do we got? Fervor increase, okay. So when like priests and other people involved in a faith do like good stuff, then fervor rises, otherwise it decreases. Because like if you see a bunch of priests running around and they're not being very priestly, then you're gonna think, hey, maybe this faith is actually crap, because you know, even the people who are meant to be like telling us of the faith aren't following it, so it makes it more likely for heresies and stuff to break out. Whereas if the fervor is high, then people are more willing to convert to it because they're like, oh, you know, people find purpose in this religion. People are more likely to. High fervor is also needed to wage like crusades and so on, because you know you need to have high fervor for people to be going off, like willing to go off to foreign lands to fight and kill and die for your religion, right? So in this case, our fervor went up by 10. And it is currently at 89%. So this guy's going to come and attack us again, and while we had a like big... excellent. Bring them live. Now note that unlike in CK2, your levies will replenish over time, I think. Is that actually, that might not be true. Let me double check that. I honestly don't remember if it's the case in this game that you need to be in friendly land or not to reinforce. But we'll find out very shortly, because when the month ticks over, I'll either reinforce or I won't. Okay, so no reinforcing in enemy lands, okay. In fact, we're actually slowly losing troops because we're taking attrition. Since we're besieging a fortified holding, so like too heavy for us to deal with. note that if we move off this county, we'll lose all of our siege progress. Because, like, we're not breaking walls down or anything, right? We're literally just sitting out here waiting for people to starve until they decide to give up the ghost and let us have it. So, you know, if we walk away, then they can just immediately go out and start getting the food up again. So I'm going to go for this one, since that makes it less likely that we'll get in trouble when we're commanding armies, since here it reduces the risk. And our sway scheme finally succeeded. So our bishop now likes us enough that he's, you know, on side, and also he's actually, you know, paying us taxes and levies, so that's really good. Now we just gotta wait for... Oh, we got a daughter. That's not terrible, but it's not spectacular. So what we're gonna do is there. See, we've got this kid here, so we're going to say educate child, and we're going to take them on ourselves. This gives us an opportunity to, like, guide what kind of traits the child develops. Not to the extent that it did in Crusader Kings 2, especially since in CK2 you could game it so that it would end up with really good traits like ambitious or shrewd. It's not that good in this game, but having control over how your next heir turns out is very powerful. Preferably we wouldn't inherit as a girl, but you know, these things happen. So we're going to raise them as if, like, until further notice, we're going to raise them as if they're going to be our next character. I'll probably talk about that more next time, because I'm going to stop after I won this war, and it's not likely that we're going to lose this war. They are actually causing us to retreat faster than we were causing them to retreat. Like, more of our guys ran away than theirs did. But we just had more guys generally, so we just outnumbered them and won. Okay, so since the... Oh, hold on. That's... Ah. Excellent. Okay. We won the siege, and since we now are in all... Aside from just, like, gaining war score from winning battles and so on, if you completely control all of your target's lands, then you can just instantly force them to surrender, right? Same as if, for example, if you capture them, then, you know, you literally have them at your mercy, so you can demand that they surrender, and they will. So in this case, because we have 100% war score, we can say enforce demands, and so we get all this stuff. So, boom. He's not happy, but he's obliged to agree. So, normally he would become our vassal, but since that's his only holding, we just take it directly. Okay, so we've now done our first step into moving forward in our plans, right? So we've taken over Desmond, we've taken over Oswego. So now we've gone from holding 3 counties, we now hold 5 of the required 8 counties. So after we take over Leinster and then Dublin and then Athlone, we'll have everything that we need to make the kingdom title, and after that things will get a bit different. I'm going to stop there for now because it's been 2 hours and I haven't been streaming much lately, so my throat is killing me from all of this talking. And I'm also talking more than I normally do since I'm trying to explain everything that's going on. Next time I'm going to talk more about, like, how to clean up this internal stuff that we've got going on, and some, like, administrative stuff to do with actually running the well, because at the moment it's all been, like, early setup and then, you know, fighting. So yeah, I hope that this helped a little bit. I know it's not necessarily the best layout. Like, I thought about writing a script, but then I thought the game kind of, like, so much of the fun of this game for me is that you never know what's going to happen, and I thought writing a script might kind of detract from that, so I did kind of wing it, which might not be that great for learning, but I hope that helped at least a bit. And I'll have more out when I get more time to do this. I probably won't be streaming for a day or two because my throat needs time to recover after talking this much. But if you're watching this on YouTube, please like the video if you did like the video. And you know, the rest of it. I'm on Twitch most of the time. I have a Twitter. You know, everything's where it should be. So yeah, I will see you guys later. Thank you very much for stopping by. Same.